So day 25, January prayer and fasting, and we're in Leviticus 25 summary, which is all about the Sabbath years and even the Jubilee. So every 7 years there was meant to be or every 6 years, 7 years, there'll be a Sabbath, a whole year of rest. So it showed that the Israels, and this was for when they came into the land. So they had to trust God. They had to know for the whole year they were not meant to work or try and take anything from the land. God will provide. Also, every 49 years, then the 50th year, they'll have a Jubilee where any slaves or people will be set free, and it's another year of rest, which means altogether that's like a double Sabbath, because it'll be 2 years of rest. So they have to trust God that God will provide for the whole 3 years that God will provide. Also showing laws about how to not have slaves amongst yourselves. So if they were to be a brethren, like a fellow Israelite, and they were, because of those times, if you're really poor, either you had death or slavery, so you go into slavery. But if you're an Israelite and someone was poor, and you're meant to try to help them, and you're not meant to compel them to be a slave, rather paid a worker is what you should have let them be, and they will be able to redeem themselves. Even land then, actually, before, when they got to Canaan, God allotted all land to them. So they couldn't keep land, or they couldn't sell land to people, they could only lease it. So every Jubilee, land was meant to be restored to the original owner, showing that God actually owns the land. And for them to know, God even told them that they're sojourners and strangers in the with him. So it's not that he gave them the land and it's theirs. Technically, it's them understanding the land belongs to God, and they're just strangers there to understand what they need to understand, who actually runs the land and owns the land. Also, other things we see, it was talking about on the Day of Atonement, the trumpet sound was the day of the Jubilee. We also had, with this harvest of them not doing no work in the land, it's also wise management of the land, because it meant that the seventh, every 7 years, they'll be letting the land rest so the nutrients can grow as well. So those scientific things, that would be good for as farmers to do. Nowadays, some Jewish people don't observe the Sabbath that way. What they'll do instead is sell their land on the 7th year, so they don't own it, and then they'll say if they work, it's like they didn't own the land. Other Jews also will only always harvest 6/7 of their land. So each time, by the time it comes to the 7th, there will be a whole year where they haven't touched a certain part of the land. We also talked about the crops are not to be planted, and then the redeeming. So even this redeeming, so the person that was meant to be, I think it's called a Joah, so a special redeeming relative, it was called a Goel actually in Hebrew. The redemption of the land was accomplished by someone called a Goel. They had the rights to redeem a slave, their family member, if they became a slave or a worker, or they can avenge for if their family member was killed. So I also pointing to Jesus, who redeemed us from slavery and sin. He redeemed us from, and he won the victory against the murderers of our souls and who is the devil and stuff like that. So it says here, Jesus redeems us from slavery to sin, restores our inheritance. So so that's another thing that Redeemer God could do for their family, restore their inheritance, which Jesus did as well, and avenge the soul murder of his people, defeating the one who came to kill. And in other summaries of the chapter, if one of your brethren becomes poor and falls into poverty among you, then you shall help him. So God was caring about the working conditions, does not want workers to be mistreated in their labor. We talked about, the usury, so unlawful tax. They were not meant to give people unlawful tax and things like this. And even Naomi, so in Ruth actually, so Boaz was actually a redeeming relative for Ruth when she was poor and she went to the land, and it was one relative was going to redeem her and stuff, but then when he realized you have to marry her, he didn't want to do it, but Boaz stepped up and he did it.